In part 4, we're going to add in our decks as well as some of our components or our different kind of pieces of furniture, I guess you could call it, within our building, and then add a site to our building as well. So I'm back in my level 1 floor plan, which you again can get to by just double clicking in your project browser on your level 1 floor plan if you aren't here already. And what I'm going to do is temporarily bring my AutoCAD file back into my drawing. So I'm going to click on my light bulb down here to reveal my hidden elements. And I can kind of see some traces of my CAD file. So I'm going to click on my AutoCAD file and I'm going to unhide that category. And then once I have it unhidden, unhide that element as well. I guess I did hide element and hide category. I'm just going to close out of this mode. So I can either click on the little light bulb or click on that X. So I have my AutoCAD file back. The problem is my floors right now are sort of in the way of it. So what I'm going to do is hide those floors again temporarily, which is keyboard shortcut VG to open up your visibility and graphics for this view, or to click on visibility and graphics here in your properties panel. And then I'm going to go down to floors. So I'm just going to hit F just to get there a bit faster. I'm just going to uncheck floors altogether. So when I hit apply, I now can see where all of my different parts or pieces are. So anything that isn't essentially like the building itself is something that we would use or call a component for it. Keep in mind that some of these components are a little bit different than what we're going to use. Like we might have a different looking bathtub ever so slightly. Let me also just hide my dimensions again. So I'm going to right click on my dimensions, hide and view category. I don't really want them back right now. But say if my wall is a little bit different than this wall, that's okay. Or if my fridge is going to be a different size fridge, that again will be okay. We're just going to be putting some components into our building to represent the various kind of built-ins and requirements that would come from us as the designer or the architect. So I'll first just kind of deal with my bathroom stuff. Now the component tool is keyboard shortcut CM, or it's going to be this button here in your architecture tab. And I have already preloaded in a lot of components for this building. So I've already brought in a vanity sink, a range or a stove, a fridge, a tub, a washing machine, a toilet or a water closet, a water heater. And so really anything that kind of exists here in these orangey, pinky layers, we're going to include in our building as well. So let's just kind of work our way, I guess. Let's just start in our bathrooms. So I'm going to start with just my vanity sink here. So I'll use this private sink because this is not a public building. If I want to spin it around, I'm just going to hit the space bar to spin it. And then to place it, I'm just going to eyeball it on top of where this sink is. And I'll click to place. And my other sink over here, again, I can use the space bar to flip it. That double-sided line, that is going to be the countertop or the backsplash of the counter. So we want that up against the wall. Let's also then put in our toilets. So I'll scroll down in my list here till I find my water closet. Again, I'll use a private based one. And then I'll use my space bar to flip it, put the toilet here and one here as well. So you can kind of think of these like CAD blocks. And then lastly, for my bathrooms, I'll also put in a tub. So I have to have it as a wall-based. I can use the spacebar to flip it around. And one thing I would recommend doing here is see how our wall doesn't come out as far as this tub does. We can just hit escape a bunch of times. And then I can click on this wall and I can either use my arrow keys to bring it out, or I could use the align tool to click on the edge of the tub and the edge of the wall. So that way they're flush against each other. Got another tub over here. So I'm going to hit escape 100 times. Back in my architecture tab, again, it's this button or keyboard shortcut CM. And I can use the space bar to flip that tab around. Next, let's work on our kind of utility area here. So we have a water heater that we can place. We also have somewhere in here a air handler. So if I scroll all the way up to the top, let's just use this one. I know it's a different size or shape, but put my air handler in there. And then my washer and dryer. You can also search up here, so I can search for washer, but sometimes it's like you have to know exactly what you're searching for. So we're not searching for a washer, we're searching for a washing machine. According to the computer, that's a totally different thing. So I'll put my washing machine in, again, space bar to spin it around. And I'll put a dryer right next to it. So I can search up at the top for dryer. I don't remember what size washing machine I used, but we'll spin her around with the space bar, and I can put a dryer there right next to it. I'm gonna work on my kitchen stuff last because I'm gonna show you like a little trick that I often like to use for kitchen stuff. So next I'll do my closets. I'll hit escape 100 times. I'll go back into the component tool, which again is this button or keyboard shortcut CM. Now for the closets, we have a closet shelf. We've got two different sizes in here. It's not really going to matter too much which size you use, but closet shelves are going to be a little different because we're going to draw them based on work planes instead of faces. These were all placed on faces. This we're going to do on a work plane. And then I'm going to, so I selected that option, and then I'm going to draw it across this wall, one across this wall, and you can see that hidden line coming in, and another one across this wall. So I've put in 3 shelves. I'll do another one up here for my coat closet, and then one in this bedroom, and another one in this bedroom as well. So we can't see them too much, but if we go into our 3D view and we use our section box, so I'll hit escape 100 times, we can kind of slice our roof and our ceiling off and then hold shift in the scroll wheel to orbit around, and now we can see like our shelves and our units and stuff in there within our bathrooms. One of the reasons why I don't like my 3D view in this consistent colors is because I have a lot of this weird gray abyss stuff. So that's why I kind of just like working in hidden line. But I do know a lot of students like consistent colors. If you want to leave your cube in here in consistent colors, that's totally fine. Just not like floor plans. Final floor plan should not be in consistent colors for it. So back in my level 1 floor plan, the last thing for my components that I'm going to focus on is my kitchen area. So I'll put in like my fridge and my stove. So again, that's keyboard shortcut CM or the component button here. For my fridge, or let's put in our stove first. So I'll put in a 30-inch electric range. Just kind of eyeball it here. And then I'll also put my fridge in. I'll do a 30-inch fridge. Maybe I'll do a little bigger. I'll do a 34-inch fridge, and that's just left-handed or right-handed. It's not really going to matter too much. I can use the space bar to spin it. Let me move it out a little. It was a little bit too much in that wall. Now for my counters, I'm going to wind up having to do 3 different counters. So I'm going to go into the component tool again, and I'm going to place first a countertop with a sink. So I'll use this countertop. I'm going to spin it around with my space bar. Again, I want those double lines towards where the wall is going to go. And I'm going to just click to place it. I know that the sink's not in the right place and my counter isn't long enough, but I can always just pull on that blue grip to move it. And I can pull on my grip here in the center to move my sink roughly where I want it to be. For the rest of my counters, I'm going to use just the regular countertop with no sink in it. Place, and then pull, place, and pull, and then spin around, place, and pull. Now, what we should do, so I'll look at it three-dimensionally again. So right now we just have floating counters here. What we should do is use that join geometry tool that we use to kind of mesh that wall together and our roofs together. However, there's been recently kind of this glitch happening where if I try to join geometry, so keyboard shortcut JG, that the whole counter disappears, which it appears it's still happening. So I'm just going to leave it with this line, these awkward lines here. Just going to leave them be. Now for base cabinets and even like upper cabinets, what I often do is I don't actually use cabinets as components. There are families, there are components that you can get for upper cabinets and lower cabinets. But what I do instead is I like to model a generic component in place. So I'm going to go to the component tool, but I'm going to click on the little arrow underneath the component button. And I'm going to do model in place. And I'm going to call it a generic model. And I'm going to call it base cabinet. Then I'm going to do an extrusion. So this is sort of like the push-pull tool from SketchUp, in which I'm going to draw in just around the area I want to put cabinets. I guess I'm going to have to do them as two, aren't I, because of that stove. Bum, bum, bum. So I'm going to have to cut this this in half. So I'm going to hit escape 100 times. I'm going to slice this line in half and then make this into two. So I'll teach you a new tool then. So the slice tool is keyboard shortcut SL. So after we've hit escape 100 times, SL, and then your cursor turns into a little knife, and then you can just cut it in half. And then I'll use the trim tool, keyboard shortcut TR, to make this line and this line into one, this line and this line into one. And I'll hit escape a bunch, and I'll move that over so that this way I have an opening for where my stove's going to be in my cabinet. Additionally, before I hit my green check mark, I'm going to draw just a rough rectangle around where my sink is. So that way I just don't have cabinets poking out from my sink. And then I'm going to hit my green check mark. And I'll click my 3D view with my section box kind of splitting it open. And we can see the cabinets I've drawn, but right now they're only 1 foot tall. So if I want to make them taller, I'm going to pull on this grip, and I can even bring them up to a specific height. So that way they sit nice and flush underneath my countertop in there. Then I'll hit my green check again, and now it's kind of like I have base cabinets, but I didn't really have to draw in base cabinets or place base cabinets. I'll do kind of the similar thing for my upper cabinets. So I'm going to put my visual style into wireframe so that way I can see that line that's for my upper cabinets. And I'm going to go back into the architecture tab. I'm going to model in place a component. And I'll make it a generic model. I just like making them generic. It's just easier. and I'll call this upper cabinets. And then I'll make an extrusion. And I'm just going to trace around based off of this mustard line. Whoops, didn't go far enough. So I'm just tracing around. Back up, over, and then clicked in place. And then we have another little cabinet here. And I'll hit my green check. Now when I go look at this one 3D, let's see if I can find her. I might have to go into wireframe just so I can select it. There we go. I'm going to pull it up, but then I'm also going to pull that base up. And then let's put myself back into hidden line mode. So essentially, I want the bottom of it to sit maybe that seems good. That seems like a nice height for it. And then I can hit my green check. And so now I have kind of upper cabinets in there as well. They're not going to show up in my level 1 floor plan. So I'll go back into level 1 and I'll put myself back in hidden line. I was going to say they shouldn't, but it looks like they are. I was going to say just because of where they, their height, if they're starting 5 feet up and the floor plan cuts at 4 feet. But what we can do to change their line type to be hidden is we can use this line work option and we can say line style hidden line, and I can make these, just kidding, I want it to be line style hidden, and I can make all of these lines a hidden line type instead of being solid. So we can kind of just manually override how they're showing up in there. And what I would probably do for this casework, since it's not showing up the way I want it to, or these countertops, is I would do like, just make them, let's just do invisible. Looks like invisible's not even, oh, there it is. I'm going to say I can make those lines invisible and then just manually draw in a new line there. So to draw in a new line there, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut DL for detail line, and then I'm just in my thin line option, I could just draw a new line in there manually for it. So that's how I could get rid of those weird pieces that aren't allowing it to overlap. So those would be all of my components. Next, let's add in our front deck and our patio as well. So part of our patio is going to be ever so slightly off. So really, I'm just going to kind of use how far out as a reference. And this one here, I really could do without the AutoCAD drawing, totally. But I'm going to just draw these patios in kind of like floors. So I'm going to start in the architecture tab. I'm going to start the floor tool. And then for my floor type, I'm going to use this concrete slab. This is just a 6-inch concrete slab. And I'm going to give it a height offset of 0. I'm going to go back to nothing. And then I'm going to use the rectangle tool instead of the pick wall tool, since I'm not drawing these necessarily based off walls, to just draw from this corner out to this corner. So I'm looking for this wall being highlighted blue and this wall being highlighted blue before I click. And I'll do another one from this corner out to here. So I'm using like a little bit of a reference, but not too much for those blue lines. And then I'll hit my green check. And then at this point, well, never mind. I was going to say at this point, we don't need our CAD drawing anymore, but we still need it just to put in our railings and our deck here. If we go into our 3D view, we can see our concrete pads there, or our slab concrete there. And then let's add in our deck kind of post here as well. So for our columns, we're going to click on the little arrow underneath column in the architecture tab, and we're going to put in an architectural column. They're going to be made out of 6x6 posts. So I'm just going to roughly kind of eyeball it on top. 1, 2, and 3. And then I'll hit escape a bunch of times. And then we'll add some railing in as well. We're going to put railing here, here, and here as well. So the railing, because of the fact that we have to do them with breaks in between, we have to do it as 3 separate railings. So in the architecture tab, we're going to click on railing. And then I'm going to just draw based off of the middle of my column over and hit my green check. I'll hit escape. I'll go back into the railing tool from middle to middle, hit my green check, hit escape, back into the railing tool from middle down, green check, hit escape. At this point, we no longer need our AutoCAD file. Yes, I feel pretty confident. So at this point, we can delete our AutoCAD work in there. So what I'm going to do is click on my AutoCAD file. If I'm not sure if it's the CAD file, you could hover over it and you can see the fact that it's showing me like the file name. And then I can hit delete on my keyboard and get rid of it. If I want to bring my floors back, again, that's keyboard shortcut VG. And then you could go to the F for floor, and you could recheck floor and hit apply. And now you have your floors back and visible in here. I'll go to my 3D view. And then we've got our decks in there. I can also move my up so I can see the whole roof. So I'm moving my section box up so I can see my roof. So that way I can make these 3 columns attached to the roof. So I'm going to select one. I'm going to hold the control key to select column 2 and column 3. And then I'm going to look at it head on from the right. And I'm going to adjust this top offset until they kind of are flush into that roof. So I'm going to guess, let's try putting it up 3 inches. Almost 4. There we go. So that way they're kind of sitting flush into that roof. All right. And then last thing we'll do in this video is we're going to add a site to our building. And then after we add our site to our building, we're going to put a foundation in as well for it. So let's go back into our level 1 floor plan. And to put a site in our building or on our piece of property, we're going to go into the massing and site tab, and we're going to add in a topo solid. You could think of topo solids essentially as like really big giant floors that are the ground. So Revit now considers topography to model and work a lot like the floor tools will work. So we're going to create a topo solid. I'll use this one here, this 00 grassland one. And I'm going to click on my rectangle tool. I'm going to make a really big rectangle. Didn't really matter too much about the size, but I'm going to give it a height offset of, let's say,